Are you sick of all these mandates? Guess what? There are a few countries that have decided to do away with restrictions. And can you guess why? The answer may surprise you. It surprised me as well. They're just tired of it and realize they will just have to live with COVID-19, and they have decided to open up and manage the best way they can by improving treatment and encouraging their population to take care of themselves. Welcome back to The Legal Code, the channel dedicated to discussing various legal topics circulating or which should be circulating. On this channel, we discuss not only legal topics in pop culture and current events, but also important legal topics confronting our culture and society from which we can learn. If you like that sort of thing, don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as share this video with anyone to whom you think will be helpful. Now let's get into the video. First on this list, drum roll please, Norway. Yes, I was surprised, but not really surprised. But the Scandinavian nations have always been rather progressive in many of their policies. Before we get into Norway's step towards freedom, you should know that Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark are not socialist countries like many people like to see. Specifically, Norway, like its Scandinavian neighbors, are characterized as mixed economy, meaning it's a capitalist market economy with state ownership in strategic areas. Most industries in Norway have largely been governed by the private sector. Nevertheless, some industrial activities are owned or run by the state, which is why people tend to think Norway is socialist. The country has a very high standard of living compared to other Western nations and a strongly integrated welfare system. As a matter of fact, Norway's modern manufacturing and welfare system rely on financial reserve produced by the exploitation of Norway's natural resources, particularly the North Sea oil. The Norwegian state maintains large ownership positions in key industrial sectors such as petroleum, hydroelectric energy productions, aluminum production, and the largest Norwegian bank, as well as telecommunication. For this reason is why Norway has incorrectly been characterized as a socialist country, because large industries are government run. Now that we've touched just the tip of the iceberg with background information, let's look at how Norway is beginning to ease restrictions as of the end of September 2021. So in the end of September of 2021, Norway announced that it will start welcoming travelers from other countries without obliging them to follow strict entry rules such as quarantining, which has been in place for 561 days now. Wow, it's been almost 2 years. Now, Norway's Ministry of Justice and Public Security made this announcement and said that the first phase will begin on September 25th. The Nordic countries' authorities have introduced the three-phase plan through which Norway will gradually remove entry bans that affect travelers from other countries. Since then, on September 26, the Norwegian Prime Minister decided to scrap all restrictions together for Norway. Excitingly, Norway's Prime Minister Erna Solberg has stressed that now the time has come to return to our normal daily life. Since this announcement, long lines were seen outside Oslo's nightclubs, the capital of Norway, bars, as well as restaurants. Neither vaccination status certificates nor negative tests were required at any of these venues. Norway, as of date, has recorded 185,327 COVID-19 infection cases and 850 deaths since the beginning of this pandemic, and based on the data provided to WHO. The recent decision to ease restrictions may help the country recover from the damages caused by the crisis situation. So Norway has begun lifting entry restriction for travelers from the European Union, Switzerland, and the UK, as well as a few other countries that have recently reported low rates of COVID-19 infections. Travelers from these areas may travel to Norway with vaccine certificate without needing to quarantine. Children under age 18 are also exempted from quarantine requirements, while adult travelers can terminate their mandatory quarantine by presenting a negative COVID PCR test on the third day of their arrival. Norway's government has also announced that the hotel quarantine rule has been removed as a requirement. However, it will serve as an option for those who do not have another suitable self-isolation location. Travelers from these areas mentioned earlier who do not have proof of vaccine may still travel there as long as they produce the negative PCR test that's taken within the last 72 hours. Again, fully vaccinated travelers are exempted from testing and quarantine requirements. Those who have not received the jab or recovered from the virus must present a negative COVID-19 test result before entry. Also, they're required to fill the registration form, undergo testing at the border, and go into self-isolation. Now let's look at employment in Norway and see how the government has handled mandating the vaccine. Well, with 90% or more of the population of Norway vaccinated, Norway is not compelling people to get the jab at this point, especially since the end of September announcement that it will scrap all restrictions. Similar to Norway, the Danish government lifted all remaining COVID restrictions in the country on September 10th, saying COVID-19 was no longer an illness which is a critical threat to society. Danes can now enter nightclubs and restaurants without showing a COVID passport or use public transport without wearing a face covering and meet in a large number without restrictions, essentially returning to pre-pandemic life. Denmark claims that its success lies partly in vaccination rollout. As of September 13, over 74% of Denmark's population was fully vaccinated against COVID-19, according to Our World, a Danish data collection. Similarly, we look to Sweden, which has ended all restrictions and never mandated the vaccine. Sweden has been the outlier in all aspects of handling the disease, shunning hard lockdowns throughout the pandemic and relying heavily on voluntary recommendations regarding issues such as social distancing, hygiene, and not mandates. In contrast, we unfortunately see Italy launching into some of the strictest anti-COVID measures starting this month in October. Both the government and private sectors will be required to show proof of vaccination against the virus or lose pay. We see this policy resulting in continual protests by Italians who oppose the vaccine pass. Similarly, we continue to see unrest in Australia, an upheaval regarding these mandates, deploying riot police to suffocate the protests against the lockdown. Canada is also facing a potential wave of termination tied to mandatory workplace vaccine policies, as a growing number of employers are requiring workers to be fully inoculated or risk losing their jobs. This begins to go into effect end of October and for some industries in November. Every nation is handling restrictions differently, as is in the states, which each state adopting their own measures and trying to balance public health crisis with social unrest and inequity. We can see that there's no clear answer for anyone. And what's your opinion on this? How other nations are approaching these mandates? It's interesting to see how other nations have a different approach to the same disease. There are different ways to be effective, this shows us. With the US at a little over 56% vaccination, do you think it's enough with the mandates now? Sweden, I believe, is at 64% and the Danes at 75%, Italy at 70%, Australia at 51%. What number is satisfactory for nations to begin easing restrictions? What do you think? Hopefully this information has been helpful. You've been able to see a glimpse in how other nations are handling the same crisis. I would love your opinions on this topic. If you have something to say, just drop that in the comments section. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.